On a quiet Sunday evening in August 1971, the world's financial landscape was about to change forever. President Richard Nixon took to the television stage, delivering a speech that would quietly undo centuries of monetary tradition. This was no war, no revolution. Instead, it was a moment when money itself lost its meaning. Before that night, a dollar bill was more than just paper. It was a claim, a promise backed by gold. For every $35, you could exchange your paper for 1 ounce of gold. Stability was not just an idea. It was enforced by the scarcity of metal itself. This was the Bretton Woods system, born shortly after World War II at a conference in New Hampshire. The U.S. dollar became the anchor of the global financial system. Other currencies, pounds, francs, yen, were pegged to the dollar, and the dollar itself was anchored by gold. For decades, this system provided stability. After the devastation of war, the world was rebuilt on metal-backed trust. Trade flourished as currencies retained real value. But beneath this surface of confidence, a fragile balance was beginning to wobble. Here lies the first subtle hook. What happens when the promise of gold is no longer enough? What if the dollars circulating far exceeded the gold backing them? A tension was quietly building, testing this system's limits. But before we get there, let's ground ourselves in the story of the gold standard itself, a foundation that many today rarely consider. Understanding this will reveal why Nixon's speech felt so seismic. Stay with us as we step back into history, where money was real, trusted, and limited by physical resources. Only then can we understand the illusion that replaced it, and why it still affects every dollar in your pocket today. After World War II, the world faced the enormous task of rebuilding shattered economies. To restore trust, nations met at Bretton Woods in 1944, agreeing to link their currencies to the U.S. dollar, which in turn was pegged to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. This framework created a stable global currency system. Countries like the United Kingdom, France, and Japan tied their national currencies to the U.S. dollar, enabling predictable exchange rates and encouraging international trade. The gold standard meant discipline. Because every dollar was exchangeable for gold, governments could not print money without limits. This scarcity prevented rampant inflation and preserved the purchasing power of money. For nearly 3 decades, the system worked well. The post-war world experienced extraordinary growth and stability. Yet, as the 1960s approached, new pressures began to arise. The demands on the dollar were about to exceed what gold could cover. The United States faced enormous costs from global military involvement, infrastructure expansion, and social programs. This spending outpaced gold reserves, creating more dollars than there was gold to back them. A fragile imbalance was growing. Foreign governments began to notice the discrepancy. France's President Charles de Gaulle was the first to challenge the system, demanding gold instead of dollars. This move signaled a growing loss of faith in the dollar's promise. As the 1970s dawned, the United States was caught between 2 difficult choices. It could honor the gold standard commitment while risking collapse, or it could break the link and hope the world would accept the change. The stakes were higher than ever. France's withdrawal of dollars for gold depleted U.S. reserves rapidly. Germany, Japan, and even the United Kingdom soon followed suit. Fort Knox's gold started to drain fast, threatening the entire global monetary system anchored on the dollar. Inside the White House, advisors were panicking. They understood that losing the gold reserves meant losing the trust that made the dollar valuable. The pressure to act was immense, but the choices were fraught with uncertainty. As foreign nations demanded their gold, the U.S. government faced a historic decision. The promise that had backed money for generations was about to be broken. But what unfolded was a calculated risk with consequences that still ripple today. On August 15, 1971, millions of Americans tuned in expecting routine news. Instead, President Nixon appeared calmly at his desk, announcing a temporary suspension of the dollar's convertibility into gold, a move that would forever change global finance. The word temporary was a thin veil. 50 years later, that measure remains. Overnight, money ceased to be a promise backed by metal. Instead, it became a policy, a declaration by government fiat. This marked the birth of modern fiat currency. Public reaction was muted at first. Life continued with little immediate change. Shops remained open and prices stable. But beneath this calm, the foundation of monetary discipline had been removed, unleashing forces that would shape decades to come. Without gold to limit it, governments could now print, borrow, and spend with no real restraint. Money became a tool of politics, untethered from minds or productivity. This shift altered the rules of the global economy irreversibly. Soon, the 1970s revealed the cost of this new freedom. Inflation soared. The prices of homes, food, and energy surged dramatically. An average home cost $25,000 in 1971 and nearly tripled by 1981. Oil prices quadrupled. The purchasing power of the dollar fell by more than half in just 10 years. Ordinary people felt it every time they filled their gas tanks or shopped for groceries. But as the economy shook, a new era was dawning on Wall Street, the age of debt. The untethered dollar needed a new anchor, and that anchor was trust. Trust that the government would manage the money supply. Trust that the dollar would be accepted worldwide, and trust that debts could grow indefinitely without consequences. This trust allowed the U.S. to fund wars, welfare, and deficits without worrying about gold. Economic cycles of inflation and credit boomed throughout the 1970s and 80s. This new financial religion became known as the dollar standard. Instead of gold, the entire world now backed itself with the U.S. dollar. This system gave America unparalleled power. The U.S. no longer needed to export goods to maintain global dominance. Instead, it exported currency and influence, shaping the world economy through its monetary policy. But there was a darker side. When money can be created endlessly, debt becomes addictive. Governments borrow to win elections, corporations borrow to buy back stock, families borrow to cover incomes that no longer keep pace with rising costs. By 1971, U.S. national debt was about $400 billion. Today, it exceeds $34 trillion, a nearly hundredfold increase. Every dollar of that debt exists only because Nixon severed the gold link decades ago. Soon after Nixon's announcement, the rest of the world followed. Europe abandoned its own gold pegs. Countries like Japan, Canada, and Australia adopted fiat money. By the 1980s, no major currency was tied to anything physical. Money had become belief. Belief, as history shows, can be fragile. Empires of the past have seen their coinage debased, their promises broken. Nixon's move was not just economic, it was a civilizational turning point marking the moment faith replaced gold. Half a century on, we live inside the consequences. Inflation that never truly dies, debt that can never be repaid, and a financial system dependent on endless expansion to avoid collapse. This fragile illusion shapes our reality today, yet many see this as normal, because they have never known anything else. Prices rise, currencies devalue, governments print trillions. But this is not a new story. It's the long echo of a decision made that August night in 1971. The night Nixon freed the dollar was the night the world became chained to it. Money didn't die with a bang, but with silent applause, and that applause has never ceased. This is the enduring story behind the illusion of modern currency. The aftermath reshaped the global economy. The petrodollar system tied oil trade to the U.S. dollar, boosting its dominance. Organizations like the IMF and World Bank wielded increased influence, aligning global finance with American monetary policy. Every financial crisis since, from Latin America's debt challenges to the 2008 crash, triggered the same response: print more money, borrow more, promise more. Each bailout expanded the system while making it more fragile. This cycle delays reckoning but guarantees that when it comes, it will be more severe. The financial system today runs not on gold or production, but on confidence, the most volatile and uncertain resource of all. Here lies a second subtle hook. The trust we place in money today might seem assured, but history warns us it is fragile. The illusion that Nixon unleashed remains with us, shaping every financial decision worldwide. From petrodollars to IMF policies, the legacy of 1971 weaves through every corner of global finance. It's a story of power, influence, and the unseen strings that guide today's economies. As new crises flare, the solution remains familiar. More printing, more borrowing, more promises. Yet each step further entangles the world in a fragile web of debt and confidence. This modern system's fragility carries profound risks, but it also reveals human ingenuity, the ability to adapt and invent new tools in the face of changing reality. Understanding this balance is key to grasping today's financial world. As we move toward the future, the legacy of the 1971 shift is clear. The world's money is no longer rooted in metal but in belief, trust, and confidence, a fragile foundation for a complex global economy. What truly died on that August night in 1971? It wasn't just the gold standard. It was the very idea that money should represent real value, work, scarcity, or production. Money became a story told by governments, believed by citizens. But stories rely on belief, and belief, as history teaches, is fragile. Great empires, Rome, France, and others, each faced the reckoning that comes when promises replace reality. The same could happen in our time. Nixon's move wasn't a collapse, but a turning point. It bought time and avoided crisis, yet it also sowed seeds of deep instability, inequality, and economic bubbles, risks we continue to grapple with today. The gold window never reopened because it couldn't. The world had become addicted to a system rewarding debt and speculation over saving and production. Paper became power. Power became paper. This new reality reshaped our planet. We see its effects today in global economics, inflation, and in personal finance. Each rising price, each new bailout reflects the unseen legacy of that night. Understanding this history matters more than ever. So, as prices rise and currencies shift, ask yourself, how does the meaning of money affect your life? Do you see the illusion, or does belief still hold firm? This reflection connects us to a story spanning centuries and continents. The story of the gold standard's end is not just history. It's a living influence shaping the future, one that invites deeper understanding and cautious hope. Stay with us as we explore these themes in greater detail. In our next video, we'll uncover how this shift paved the way for modern financial crises you see headline news about today, a story of policy, power, and consequence just waiting to be understood. To learn more, check out our curated playlist on the channel, where history and economics unfold together, giving you deeper insight into how money shapes our world. What piece of this story surprised you most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective helps build a richer understanding for everyone watching. If this video gave you a new perspective, consider subscribing. We explore the stories behind the numbers, helping you see the financial world with clarity and calm understanding. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next exploration of economic history.